What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Week 1 reactions of Everything Collegiate here on the Ben Shepherd Podcast Network. I, of course, am Ben Shepherd. What a weekend. It's not even over yet. We have had a great weekend of college football. College football is fully back. College football semi-fully delivered. We had close games. Not many good games, but we had close games. We've already had upsets. We've already had confirmations, and we've already had just madness. A lot of madness has happened, and we still have North Carolina TCU tonight. I'm not waiting for that game. I start college tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to record, so we're just going to get a Monday episode out instead of our regularly scheduled Tuesday episodes. We're going to do Monday for this week because there's so much to go over. We're going to go over all of the big games from the weekend, all 3 top 10 matchups. I'm going to then introduce the new segment that we're going to be doing here on Everything Collegiate called Confirmed and Changed. Who confirmed my mind and who changed my mind on a week-to-week basis. Because I have a lot of opinions, and I'm able to admit when I'm wrong. But I like to do so right away so I can then be right about something afterwards. You follow me? And then because of some of the results that have happened over this weekend, I am not mentioning anything poll related until October. I'm going to try to go a month. I'm not going to mention a poll. What I'm going to do instead is give my top 10 at the end of the episode. The teams who right now, not based on a preseason poll, not based on what I think they could be, right now, what have I seen? How good are they? That's the decider. Those are the teams I want to highlight. But we have to start, obviously, with last night's game. The Sunday night ABC matchup between the Miami Hurricanes and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. A classic late 80s, early 90s rivalry. Conjuring images of Jimmy Johnson, Lou Holtz, Catholics, and convicts. What a game this was. The other top 10 games I'll get into in a bit were good games. Were close games. Were not classic games. Nobody will remember Texas and Ohio State week 1 in a year. Nobody will remember that game once the season ends. Nobody will remember the battle for Death Valley, Clemson, and LSU. People might remember this Miami Notre Dame game. This is a classic football game in late summer, hurricane-adjacent conditions out in South Florida at the Hard Rock Stadium. Miami and Notre Dame showed out. Carson Beck, after a, long offseason, threw for 200 yards and 2 scores in his Hurricane debut against a thin but very good, I would say elite Notre Dame secondary. Now, it doesn't go deeper than 4 or 5, but it is an elite secondary with those starters. Notre Dame's brand new quarterback, C.J. Carr, looked really solid in his first ever start. A lot was made about other quarterbacks making their first road starts. And while I don't think this Miami defense is quite as good as Ohio State's, it's a good defense. It sure as hell is a good defensive front line. Ruben Bain is as good as any edge rusher in college football this year. C.J. Carr looked solid. He threw a pick that was off a poor RPO quarterback decision. He said himself after the game he should have handed the ball off to Jeremiah Love. Instead, he kept it and threw that same screen pass they had run 4 times earlier in that game. It was read like a picture book. The defense deflected it up, and Ruben Bain came down with the interception. Some other things of note from this game. The Miami Hurricanes, I said it last week, the Miami Hurricanes have the best offensive line in football. Right now, as I sit here, they're all healthy, they have the best O-line in college football, especially the right side duo of preseason All-American tackle Francis Mauigoa and guard Anez Cooper. These two dudes are out of their minds good. These two guys, I'm convinced Mauigoa, at this rate, if he keeps it up, will be a top 5 pick. I think he'll be the first lineman off the board regardless come NFL draft time. And Anez Cooper might be one of the top 5 guards coming off the board in the first or second round in April's draft as well. They looked really good. Another one, remember last year, early in the year, we watched the Georgia-Alabama game, and Ryan Williams went off, and everybody was like, oh my, everybody, all the time, kept saying, do you know he's 17? Do you know he's only 17? He's only 17? You know Jeremiah Smith's only 18? He's the best wide receiver in college football. He's only 18. Miami's got another one where this is all you're going to hear all week. You know he's only 17, right? Malachi Toney was unstoppable for a half. Now, in the second half, the offensive play calling for Miami went a lot more conservative. I would argue too conservative. That's where, if you look at this game just as a box score, I would say Miami was on the night 10 points better than Notre Dame. It took Notre Dame some time to get into some offensive groove. They had nothing in the first half. They couldn't really stop anything in the first half, and they certainly couldn't stop both. The Notre Dame defense, when they tried to stop the pass, they were giving up Mark Fletcher Jr. runs and Jordan Lyle runs all day. Then when they focused on stopping the run in the first half, they couldn't stop Carson Beck from just piecing their secondary apart wherever he wanted to, because they weren't calling their plays very aggressively, which has become a Notre Dame defensive staple under Al Golden. Al Golden's back in the NFL level now, so they have a new defensive coordinator out in South Bend. And I'm not going to say they were bailed out, because this is a very good Notre Dame team. They are still in my top 10 despite losing. All 6 of the teams in the top 10 games, by the way, are very good teams. Let's not get it twisted. Those are all good football teams. But Miami in the second half, it felt to me like they were, and I know this is a cliche, they were playing not to win, but to avoid losing, which is always a dangerous thing, and it almost cost them, as Notre Dame was able to make the game a lot more close with 17 fourth quarter points, winning the second half 17-13. Time will tell. Both these teams are very good, but both of these teams, especially Miami, still have tests coming in the next month, well as Notre Dame gets a little more of a break before their next big test, which actually, no, they don't. They get one bye week. I forgot about A&M. They play Texas A&M their next game. And A&M is an offense. Their defense is suspect, but they have an offense. But they have a bye week to prep for that. Let's move on to the second game. I'm going to come back to the top 10 games because we got to talk about the big upset. Florida State beat Alabama. After 14 months of my laughter, after fans saying if we lost to Boston College, they'd eat dog poop, to losing to Boston College, to that fan not eating dog poop, to the not eating of the dog poop turning into a 2-10 season in which everybody in Tallahassee wanted their coach burned at a stake, to which everybody said this team they lost every recruit they had, every 5-star recruit they had bailed on the program, everything. All of which is true. Credit where credit is due. I must speak directly to one Mr. Thomas Castellanos. Mr. Castellanos, I've written an apology, so I'm just going to read it for you real quick. If you're listening. You're not, but if you are. If anyone hears this and knows him, feel free. I must apologize to you. I was unfamiliar with your game, sir. I mistook all the bravado you showcased over the offseason as a common case of overcompensating for an average team. I was wrong. You and your Florida State Seminoles were exceptional and deserve nothing but thanks for allowing me to laugh at a fan base I despise. and a former Washington Husky coach, which I will always enjoy doing. Sincerely yours, some dude you'll never meet. Florida State played their tails off. They were really good on the day, and Alabama wasn't. Alabama was not ready for a trip to rainy Tallahassee. And I don't care about the weather. Sometimes you can argue, yeah, weather plays a part. Weather doesn't allow the high potent offense to do more. I have seen Alabama lose games. You know, every team loses games. I have seen Alabama lose games where their offensive line was beaten by an on-paper inferior opponent. See the Vanderbilt game from last year. But I cannot remember a time in my lifetime seeing an Alabama Crimson Tide team get bullied in the manner this one did. Nobody carried the ball for more than 31 total yards for the Crimson Tide. A wide receiver named Mitch Donzie did more than that on his own for the Seminoles. 31 yards. I am 6 feet tall. That is 2 yards. They ran the ball 15 times the length of me. Figure there was a better way to kind of illustrate that, but you get it. It scans out. It was pouring rain for 2.5 quarters in this one, yet Ty Simpson threw the ball 43 times. That doesn't make, like, even in NCAA football video games, you know not to do that. How does that make sense? Ryan Williams didn't look good. And I know Jam Miller didn't play, and he's the best running back this Crimson Tide team has, and fine. But that's all Kevin Riley and Richard Young could do? Remember when Alabama had Trent Richardson to back up Mark Ingram? Better yet, I'll do one more recent. Remember 2018? The year they had Tua, Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones all in the quarterback room? Well, their running back room was Damian Harris, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, and two-shot Brian Robinson Jr. And 3 of those 4, all except Robinson, carried the ball at least 60 times for him that season. What has happened to Alabama's ability to recruit depth at a position? Simpson didn't even really have a quarterback battle in training camp. Who was going to beat him? Austin Mack, Keelan Russell? I've heard no buzz about either of those dudes. The young kids that you think could compete, you hear buzz about. You hear buzz about Julian Sand, about Lincoln Kienholz, about Bryce Underwood up at Michigan, about that dude with a hyphenated name that just won the starting job up at Cal as a true freshman. You hear Jake Retzlaff now down at Tulane. You hear about the names of guys who were in quarterback battles and are competitive. I didn't hear either of those names once in the summer or in training camp or in spring ball. Seeing an Alabama team this thin brings me back to the good old conspiracy theory that I love, even though it's probably not true because everybody probably did this, but as a jaded Oregon fan, I like to believe it. So basically, in the 2010s, Clemson, the big SEC schools, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, maybe that's probably it if we're being honest, and the Big Ten's power trio of Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State just paid everybody to come to their schools. And now that everybody can, teams are a lot thinner in the depth department. It's funny how that works. Now, it probably doesn't work like that because I'm sure Oregon paid some players over the years, just like I know USC did, Oklahoma, Texas. Everybody's paid everybody since the dawn of time. But now that it's open and everybody can legally pay everybody, it's okay. It's kind of hilarious. Oh, yeah, the Alabama, I'm like, Florida State deserves all the credit in this game. Alabama gets blame, yes, because it's fun to blame Alabama. Paul Feinbaum, that balding gas bag, is going to sit on his radio show with his call-ins all day. I don't know if he's going to be working on Labor Day. I haven't checked in. But tomorrow, certainly, if it isn't today, tomorrow is going to be madness on the Feinbaum Show. People are going to be calling in with accents that bring you back to Civil War losses. And they're just going to go to town on their quarterback. And they're going to go to town on their head coach. Everybody deserves to be fired. Everybody deserves everything. Like, forgetting the fact that this dude went, 10-3, 9-4 last year? Like, Saban's first year in Alabama, he went 7-5. The problem is, you're replacing the greatest of all time. The greatest college coach of all time, Nick Saban. The only college coach who has won national titles through multiple recruiting groups, right? Over the course of a longer period than 4 years, he's the only coach to win national titles in multiple 4-year periods. Only one, ever. Even Kirby Smart still hasn't done it. Even Dabo Swinney still hasn't done it. He's replacing that. Nothing. He will never be as good as Nick Saban. But the pressure is going to be there to be good and better quickly. But Mike Norvell, Florida State's head coach, deserves all the credit. Offensive coordinator Gus Malzahn deserves all the credit. New D coordinator Tony White deserves all the credit. And most importantly, the Florida State Seminole players deserve all the credit I can throw at them. Tommy Castellanos brought a level of swagger this team didn't have. Squirrel White brought a level of speed this team didn't have. O-line transfer trio Gunnar Hansen, Micah Pettis, Luke Pettman brought physicality and their desire to impose their will. Earl Little, Jeremiah Wilson, freshman Mandrell Desir on defense brought a desire to win every play that this team just did not have last year. I normally don't like getting into the you don't have the will to win or the desire debate that you see on shows like First Take, because all that's nonsense, except in the case of Florida State last year, where they did not have a desire to win football games. Florida State will now be ranked, and they have a month to get ready for a trip down to Miami on October 4th, which is going to be one heck of a game. Because now they got East Texas A&M, a bye week, and Kent State. They're going to get into a rhythm for that game against the Hurricanes. We got to jump back to the top 10 matchups because obviously the big game everyone was talking about going into the week was Ohio State-Texas. Before I get into this game, this is where I want to take a second. Shout out Lee Corso. One of the... I'm going to tear up again. It's one of the greatest parts of a sport that I love. He is to college football what inside the NBA is to the NBA. It is one can't. It seems like one can't exist without the other. College Game Day will still be there. McAfee, Saban, Herbstreit, and Reese are going to be solid. It's never going to be the same. I want to give a shout out to Fox and Big Noon Kickoff, a show that I have had my issues with, a network that I have my issues with. They cut their feed 5 minutes short and just showed ESPN. They just put the simulcast up for everything at Ohio State. It was beautiful. I teared up twice. I teared up the first time when Ryan Day, at the end of the first hour, presented Coach Corso the helmet with the Buckeye sticker for each time he picked the Brutus mascot head. And then all of a sudden, Kirk's dog, Peter, just pops his head up puts his paws on the table and just pops his head up, kind of looking in between the guys. And it was so adorable. And Dez is cracking up in the background. I just started tearing up. And then at the end, I couldn't, during Kirk's speech, I couldn't do it. But I want to move on from that now before I descend into a wreck. What was touted, Ohio State and Texas in the shoe, what was touted as the greatest week one game in history was not that. It was not that. It was not a classic game. I've already mentioned it's not going to be a game remembered a year from now. Nobody's going to remember this game. It was a combination of poor, inefficient offenses and crisp, dominant defenses. That combo will always create a tight but low-scoring affair. Neither one of these teams play anyone posing any level of threat until Ohio State faces Washington on September 27th, and Washington does not pose a threat to Ohio State. That's how easy the next month for both these teams are. I want to address Arch Manning first. I'm not going to blame Arch Manning. He didn't play well. I think anyone expecting him to play great, I expected him to play good. I did not expect him to play great. The media, I think, deserves a lot of the blame for Arch Manning. They have gone a little too hard on the Arch Manning hype train. There were positives, but this was the dude's first start against a team better than Mississippi State, who are laughably bad. And it's a team that, defensively, as a conference rival, I'm terrified of them now. I'm scared of this Ohio State defense again. And I thought I wasn't going to have to be because they all went to the NFL. But Caleb Downs is him. But all their defenders are him. And it seems like what's the old adage? The more things change, the more they stay the same. Yeah, that lines up for this game. Arch himself, after the game in his press conference, admitted he did not play well. But I think an outsized amount of credit belongs and should go to the Ohio State secondary. The Ohio State secondary, whether it's Davison Egbanosin, Lorenzo Styles, Sonny Styles, these dudes were all out of their minds good. They were all so good that it almost forced Arch to have a bad game, if that makes any sense. They prevented any offense emanating from any Texas wide receiver. Now, Arch himself, 100%, he missed some throws. He missed some low, he missed some high, he missed some behind. He threw an interception. I liked the mechanical quarterback play I saw from Arch Manning. He had to constantly check down to tight end Jack Endries, a transfer from Cal, and running back C.J. Baxter, who I thought looked really good in this game. In doing so, he showcased a near-pro quickness at going through his passing progressions. Stuff that even Caleb Williams has struggled with as a rookie in the NFL. Now it's because NFL defenses are light years faster than college defenses. But still, I think for a college quarterback making his first road start, I was impressed by that. He only got sacked once. He showcased a great deal of strength, invading and escaping a pair of would-be sacks late. And again, this was the toughest conditions imaginable for a first start. But C.J. Carr had tough conditions as well and looked significantly better than Manning did. Onto the Buckeye offense, they were poor as well. They didn't run it at all well all game, and aside from a spectacular catch from Carnell Tate, the aerial attack wasn't productive either. Neither offense impressed, or to be exact, no individuals on either offense impressed. Both of these defenses are national title contenders. The journey isn't over for either one of these teams. They're all six of these teams, unless they collapse, are going to be playoff teams. That's what makes them so exciting and such good matchup because they were good teams. Both these teams have an easy next couple of months. But for Texas, if they fall to Georgia on November 15th, keep this in your head. I'll pull up their schedule right now. I've got it in front of me. If they lose to Georgia, let's say they win the rest of their games and they lose to Georgia on the road on November 15th. Their best wins are Florida and Oklahoma, who are probably 8-4 teams because their schedules are so tough. But that won't be counted as quality wins. Their three good wins will be Oklahoma, Florida, and Texas A&M, none of whom will be top 10 teams. Maybe even top 15 teams by the end of the season. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to win some arguments. The nightcap on Saturday was LSU and Clemson, the Battle of Death Valley. And again, just like the game at noon, the matinee of Ohio State, Texas, neither of these offenses were ready for the season to start. This is a battle, unlike the other game, which was unproven quarterbacks against great defenses. This matchup was supposed to be the ones with the great quarterbacks against somewhat inexperienced defenses. Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik both looked good. Garrett Nussmeier looked legit. Herb Street pointed it out. I got to give him credit for it. Because the knock on Nussmeier over the past 2 years was that he was a very good QB, but when under pressure, he'd rush and make mistakes and poor decisions. After one game, though, I think he's worked its way through that issue of his. He looked calm, conservative, poised throughout the totality of that game. He had some negative plays. He got sacked. 2 of his wide receivers fumbled the ball on separate occasions, but Nussmeier didn't rush. He didn't panic. He looked very poised all game. It clearly looked like he said, I know what I need to do. I know how I need to do it. Let me go get it done. All right, let's go win the game. He put faith in his defense. He let running back Caden Durham do a lot of the heavy lifting. He let his wide receivers use their natural size to get open for the ball. 230 yards and a touchdown are not stats that will turn heads. But a 74% completion percentage against a damn solid Clemson defense will. Aaron Anderson looked the part of an LSU number 1 receiver. Almost any time he wanted the ball, he caught it. He looks like he could be a very good threat. The O-line looked solid, and the play calling was decent, but there were some time management issues for the Tigers, especially at the end of the first half when they could have gotten a field goal and just didn't call a timeout or spike the ball or anything, that need to be worked on because it could just be a first game issue. But Clemson, I mean, the question for this team still remains, can they run the ball? That was the question going in. They were my preseason pick to win the national title. I'm not going to abandon ship just because they lost to LSU. But they need to run the ball better. Antonio Williams, you hope he'll stay healthy. He got banged up early in the first half. But if you eliminate the 2 sacks they took from the stat book, as a team, Clemson averaged 2.9 yards per carry for only 53 yards. That is an inflated stat because you've taken away the 2 sacks for the negative, I think, 22 yards or whatever. And that's horrible. They've got to have something else in their toolbox. Clemson lost its 2 games against SEC teams last year and still won the ACC, but I need to see improvement in 2 weeks when they travel to face Georgia Tech otherwise, if I don't, I'm jumping off the bandwagon. Those are the big games from the week. Now let's quickly go through who changed it and who confirmed it. Teams that changed my mind and teams that confirmed it. Confirmed. Northwestern football and Preston Stone. Hey, Northwestern, not allowing Tulane to wear white to commemorate their post-Hurricane Katrina 05 squad was petty and shameful. And I'm glad you got smacked up 23-3. New quarterback Preston Stone looked terrible and threw 4 picks for the Wildcats. And yeah, they're probably, with new coach, with Coach Odom out in Purdue, yeah, they're probably the basement in the Big Ten. And for a stunt like that really ticked me off, not allowing a team to wear white to commemorate Katrina just because it's a little hot in New Orleans. Grow up, man up, and be better. Otherwise, go back to being the joke of an organization you've been. Changed. The state of Florida has changed my mind when it comes to football anyways. The jury is far from out in regards to the Gators because they only played LIU, and so I'm not touching them. But the rest of the state made a statement. Pun intended. South Florida bullied Boise State on Thursday. Florida State, of course, pulled the upset against Alabama and will be ranked on Tuesday in the AP poll that is unmentionable. And to cap it off, Miami beat Notre Dame in an instant classic last night. Vibes will be rising in the Sunshine State. But remember, they all play each other this year, too. All four of them go up against each other. Confirmed, the Tennessee defense is bad. The Volunteer defense struggled against a totally brand new Syracuse team that will be at its worst early this season and improve as the season gets late. But changed, the Tennessee offense is good. I'm totally impressed by what I saw from the Tennessee offense. Joey Aguilar looked really good, and the wide receivers still seem to have that big playability that I thought they lost when Squirrel White went to Florida State. Confirmed, Georgia Tech will contend for the ACC and potentially a playoff spot. Despite being -3 in turnover differential Friday night, despite being on the road, and despite being on the road in Boulder, Colorado, in a building that is becoming increasingly tough to win in, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets pulled out the win with quarterback Haynes King running all over the place. Well, they might not have enough to be up there with Miami, Clemson, and maybe even SMU at the top of the ACC. If they can stay healthy, they will be a team to watch this season. Changed. Auburn showed me something very impressive. I thought and still kind of think that Baylor will contend for, though they're not my favorite anymore, for the Big 12 crown. But in Waco, the Auburn Tigers showed up and kicked ass as only an SEC offensive line can. Jackson Arnold, the Oklahoma transfer, was unstoppable. Cam Coleman is the third wheel of these sophomore stud wide receivers, but he could be the one with the second most upside. I'm not putting him in the same sentence as Jeremiah Smith. And they absolutely just bullied Baylor. And then the last one is a double confirm. Utah confirmed to me that they are back. In what will likely be Kyle Whittingham's last season, they are back. And Nico Iamaleava confirmed to me that he is terrible. He got destroyed by the Utah Utes in his debut game for UCLA. And that's what you get for holding up Tennessee for more money. Now go to Pasadena, play in a half-empty stadium every game, and enjoy being a whipping boy in the Big Ten. Finally, we're going to end our show with my top 10. The teams that right now, as I sit here today, and that's the reason I can do this before TCU, North Carolina, because I don't care how well either team does in this game, they're not making this. My top 10 teams. As of right now, as I see it, who's the best, who's the worst from what I've seen on the field? Number 1, LSU. Miami beating Notre Dame was impressive. Ohio State beating Texas was impressive. LSU did it on the road. That's even more impressive. LSU number 1. Penn State. No. Ohio State number 2. I really loved their defense, and I thought that was going to be the weakness of this team going in. Number 3, Georgia. Gunnar Stockton looked for real. I know they were playing Marshall, but the wide receivers look good. Zachariah Branch has explosiveness written all over him. And Gunnar Stockton looks pretty solid. 4, Miami. Beating Notre Dame in the rain. The defense looks improved. Still a little iffy on tackling. The wide receivers look really good. And the O-line is potentially unstoppable. 5, Penn State. They played Nevada. Not really much you can take from that. Their offense is very good. 6, I have Texas. Because their defense was so dominant against Ohio State, their offense needs to work through the kinks. They will improve. They're still 6 for me. 7, I have Clemson. For almost the exact opposite reasons. I still thought Cade Klubnik looked solid. And I think they're better. They look better to me right now than 8, Notre Dame. Just don't love how thin their defense feels. Their defense feels very thin to me, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. 9, I have the Oregon Ducks. My Oregon Ducks. Montana State is an FCS team, but they were in the FCS championship game last year, and we barely beat Idaho at the start of last season. So we come out and we bury Montana State from the jump this year. Dante Moore looked really good. Malik Benson looked really good, the Florida State transfer. And our defense looks, but again, it's an FCS opponent. You can't really judge anything. Time will tell. And 10, I have to throw Florida State in here. No one else made as big of a statement. You could argue Iowa State. I'm not going to, because Alabama I view as a bigger win than Kansas State out in Ireland. Florida State is absolutely one of the top 10 teams for me right now because of what they did to the Crimson Tide in Tallahassee. That's going to do it for this episode of Everything Collegiate. We're going to be back Thursday to get you ready for week 2, because college football don't take vacations anymore, and we are going full steam ahead until middle of January. I'm Ben Shepard, signing off. Talk to you later in the week.